Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm looking at a book which has come to us from 11 International Publishing Company, and it's a book which I found fascinating reading. It's the Hungarian Yearbook of International Law and European Law for 2014. The editor-in-chief is Marcel, Szabo, and the editors are Petra, Lancos, Reka, Varga and Tamas, Molnar. Now, my wife Elizabeth and I looked at this book and we had a chat about it because it was a very interesting subject for us as part of the European law studies that we've been looking at recently. So we gave it a title for our review, A Compendium of European Viewpoints on European Union and International Law. And that's what you've got for the year 2014. I'll talk about what we think of the book in a minute. Let's have it. It's a hardback. It's quite a heavy book. There we go. Front, side. There we go. Then there's some information about the book and about the authors at the back. It runs to quite a large number of pages, 650 odd pages. What you have got is a detail at the back about the various people involved. There's an index, and that sets out who has actually been involved in producing this and the various areas they've been covering. You see there's a little bit of footnoting at the bottom, which is well covered. You've also got useful paragraph numbering. You can see that at the sides, which follows a standard national and international approach in legal publications today. I like the paragraph numbering. It makes it look a bit like a report, but it's easier to find things. There's the front cover there, and then you've got the list of contents, and you can see quite a large number of different contents on that page there. And then we run through part 2, part 3 and part 4 and so forth, looking specifically at particular areas. You've got a lot of interesting points. If you just look at the subject matter, children cases, you've got a number of very important cases, actual legal cases that have been looked at, whole issues concerning Strasbourg, human rights, nationality law. For instance, it starts off with nationality, an important area because of the nature of what's happening within the European Union at the moment. You've then got after that the actual contributors. A lot of people are involved in this publication. It's a very good publication. Then there's an editor's note, always worth reading. Some websites given there as well to link in with what this is all about. There are a couple of the editors mentioned there, and then you've got part 1, thematic part, identity, nationality and citizenship. Well, kicking off very much with a big issue. Then you see how the book structures from there. And then it runs through the whole range. It's got the name of the person who's the contributor, and obviously it mentions who he is at the bottom. So it follows very much the sort of way that we structure things in the United Kingdom with our publications. And so forth. You do see that some of the footnotes are quite extensive too. So there's a lot of information in here, running all the way through the various chapter headings. Now, let me just say what we thought of this book. Elizabeth and I had a chat about it to see, well, what would we comment on? Bearing in mind that both of us do not have working knowledge of Hungarian law, not we would be expected to, but what is the value of this book and what is the interest to us, for instance, in the United Kingdom and in England and Wales? Well, quite a lot, because it's interesting to see the international law perspective on this. This is what we say, international lawyers and academics interested in the many ramifications and problems, as well as the solutions wrought by European Union law, will welcome the opportunity to read this book from 11 International Publishing. We certainly did, because it was something new and something outside what we would normally be looking at, and I found it a fascinating read. It's a compendium, therefore, of learned and carefully researched articles by a wide range of expert contributors on developments in the field of international and EU law. You've got to have some knowledge, pre-knowledge of what they're talking about, and I actually learned quite a bit. Bearing in mind I've got some understanding as a practitioner and as an sort of retired politician of what they're actually talking about within Hungary. Many of the authors, of course, are Hungarian, but no means all. The focus is demonstrably on Europe as a whole, and it's one of the biggest issues facing us during this general election campaign. I'm recording this review during the general election campaign at the end of April 2015, when the big issue is Europe, nationality and so forth. The book itself kicks off with the issues of nationality. Generally speaking then, there seems to be a common thread of disquiet on the part of many of the contributors about the effectiveness of the EU and its evolving legal landscape. And in fact, that was part of what the issues that started our general election campaign began with the emergence of the United Kingdom Independence Party, which has seemed during the election campaign to have faded as the economy of Britain itself and the role of the nationalist issues in Scotland has really taken to the fore with the campaign so far, with a week to go. Quote, "The economically driven process of integration," says the author, the editor rather, "is no panacea for eradicating, for example, historical wounds and ensuring political cleavages. A one-size-fits-all approach simply will not do." And the book therefore consequently explores a number of issues, including citizenship, nationality, extradition, and of course a whole lot more, commenting throughout on the implications of international and European Union law on Hungarian legal practice in both civil and criminal matters. So it's interesting as an outsider and watcher for me to see what they're actually doing in that particular country, of which I haven't got a great deal of first-hand knowledge. You might say that the book offers a fascinating glimpse into the mindset of continental European lawyers and legal scholars, who more than occasionally indicate that they are more acutely aware than we are in the United Kingdom of the differences between, and often the clash between, what they refer to as Anglo-Saxon and continental legal systems. I think we talk here about the common law and the Code Napoleon, or Roman law. You can see therefore the very clear differences in the structures of the two systems. To cite one example, the view is expressed that the EU's fundamental rights culture does not necessarily result in just outcomes for victims of crime. Illustrative of this was the notorious Tobin case, which many of people will know about, in which an Irish citizen living in Hungary killed two young children, a brother and a sister, with his car. In Petra Bird's article on traps of judicial cooperation in criminal matters, the complex and convoluted consequences and ramifications of the case are discussed in minute detail. Again, as we've said with many reviews and many other commentators have said, we live in a global community today. The number of the vexed questions which emerge, centering on such issues as the shortcomings of the European arrest warrant and many of the more murky conflicts inherent in extradition procedures are highlighted. Of course, the point there again is the huge controversy in this country about the European arrest warrant, the difficulties that the Parliament now prorogued here in the UK had, and what we're going to do about that in the future Parliament. A lot to play for on the 7th of May, so I'm recording this prior to the knowledge of what will happen then. Let me conclude then by saying I found this yearbook most interesting. The statement is made here that the criminal justice regime of an even closer European Union can only be made more effective by a closer cooperation between the member states based on EU law. Yes. Is this a clarion call for greater harmonisation, or indeed total harmonisation, of EU law within the EU? Probably yes. If so, the problems involved in achieving this aim are manifold, and meanwhile the debate concerning this and related issues rumbles on, probably indefinitely, into something in the dim and distant future. And of course we are looking at the future. It's a bit like looking at a crystal ball to a certain extent, but we've got to have some idea of the direction we're travelling in. In the meantime, the book for this year, 2014, functions admirably as a showcase for a wide range of varying viewpoints on the incredibly broad spectrum of legal issues and conundrums which beset the European Union. So we're just taking one country, but the issues are much wider than that. Having perused this yearbook for 2014 then, avid readers will certainly welcome the arrival of the forthcoming Hungarian Yearbook of International and European Law for 2015. But in the meantime, thank you to you for sending the book to us, 11 International Publishing. It's a fascinating book. There we are. There are the authors again mentioned there. You see very clearly what you've got. You can see here they've got the shaded chapters which separate the various parts. You can see that. You can notice them actually in the book itself. That's the form. The backer case is covered. Then you've got a whole range of connecting factor on nationality. So the issues which are being raised here are not something that's new to people. I did find it quite an easy book to read, by the way. The only concern I did have was the huge amount of footnotes. But there again, one of the ways round that is to just read the text itself and ignore some of the more detailed stuff, unless you're a scholar looking for something particular. And if I can just remind you at the back, there is an index of the people who've contributed. And you see the index is not done in quite the same way that we would expect, but you've got the name of the people, person concerned, and then the content and context of what they've been writing about. Thank you anyway very much indeed for this book, and good luck with your next yearbook. We put the review on the web and in the journals, and we'll see what the reaction is to it. But in the meantime, thank you to all concerned for a very, very interesting trip round the Hungarian yearbook for 2014. Bye-bye.